In your mind, what is the most critical area that needs to be addressed and shored up?
Yeah, I think it's that. I think it's defensive interior. I think that's both tackles and linebackers. I think you've got some good athletes at that linebacking spot. When you talk about guys like Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, who I thought was finally starting to get himself together after a couple of injuries and playing well. They decided a couple years ago, Dave, that they wanted to be a fast defense. They wanted to be a defense that would be able to contain teams like Kansas City, with Kelsey and Tyreek Hill at the time and all those weapons that Mahomes has, especially after that playoff loss. And I think they decided, we're going to be small, we're going to be fast. And that just hasn't worked. And I think you've realized now, especially in the AFC North, which is going to traditionally be a ground and pound type of division, you've got to have some size inside. So I think it's imperative for them to find a tackle or two. You can still have some young guys on the roster and continue to develop them, the ones that you've identified as potentially long-term answers. But you've got to get bigger up front. You've got to get bigger in the middle. It may come to a situation where they have to rethink the scheme. And don't think we didn't ask Kevin Stefanski that question more than a few times this season. So it just doesn't feel like the personnel and the scheme is matching up defensively. And to me, that's by far their biggest need in the offseason.
Yeah, I would agree. It was almost like they were daring teams to run the football on them. And the team's like, okay, you want us to run it? Okay, we'll run it. Because when you look at it, the safeties are pretty good. The cornerbacks are really good. But so it's almost like, let's kind of minimize the back half because it's pretty good. Let's exploit the middle because it's a little.
Yeah. I totally agree, Dave. And when you watch teams around the league, it's like, you see these big productive tackles all over the place. And you're like, what kind of model are the Browns following here? So, again, I especially, too, when you consider, when you've got arguably the best defensive player in the AFC, if not the league, on your defensive line, I would think you would want to pair somebody up on that side of the line with him to make him even better, to make it more challenging to block him. So again, I think it's a personnel issue. I think it's a scheme issue as well. I do think that Joe Woods, as I mentioned earlier, has been handed a lot though in terms of young players on top of injuries, where there's been no margin for error defensively because you were playing kind of shorthanded offensively. There's also been some offensive issues as well that we can talk about, in terms of, Coach Stefanski's reluctance sometimes to stick with the running game. That's also an issue. But I think defense has to be priority 1 through 5 in the offseason.